Whoa. Okay. This time we have the square root of 25 minus the square root of 100. So before we can subtract these guys, it's just like absolute value. We have to evaluate each of these individually first before we can subtract them. So what we have to do here is we find the square root of 25 and the square root of 100. Square root of 25 is the same as square root of 5 squared, right? 5 times 5 gives me 25. Minus, that minus sign comes straight down. Square root of, what times itself gives me 100? 10. So this is the same as the square root of 10 squared. Okay. The square root and the squares cancel each other out. So we are left with 5 minus 10. And 5 minus 10 gives me negative 5. Good. Square root of 1/4. Now, when we are taking the square root of an entire fraction, what we want to do here is we want to break it up. So we are actually taking the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. Does everybody see that? Because the square root is big and is covering the whole thing. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to break it up. Square root of 1 over square root of 4. These are exactly the same thing. Okay? Because if we were to take the square root of the whole thing, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 1/4. Does anybody know what two numbers multiply to 1/4?
Because 1/4 is 0.2. Oh, 0.2.
What's 1/2 times 1/2? 1/4, right? So the square root of 1/4 would be 1/2. But if we break it up, it's just going to make our job a little bit easier. We're still going to get the same answer. So that's why we break it up. So we can take the square root of each one individually. Okay, so let's look at this. What is 1? What times itself gives me 1? 1. So we write the square root of 1 is equal to square root of 1 squared over 4 is the same as what times itself? 2. So square root of 4 is the same as square root of 2 squared. Yes? Alright? Those square roots and squares are going to cancel each other out, so what will I be left with? 1/2, which is what we got in the beginning, right? So we can, if we have a big square root, what we want to do is we want to break it up. We take the square root of the numerator and we take the square root of the denominator. This is going to help us later in Algebra 1 when our square roots are not always perfect squares. Okay? Alright, example 8. Now we're getting to something a little bit more complicated. If y equals 9, what is the value of 5 square root y? Sorry about that. Okay, if y equals 9, what is the value of 5 square root y? What do you think my first step is going to be in here? Alright, so what is my first step going to be here? I need to plug it in. So we need to take y equals 9 and plug it in for y in here. So what would my expression be? 5 square root 9. What does this 5 in front of the square root mean? What operation will we be doing? We're going to be multiplying. Okay, I know the square root looks like a division, but it's not. So what this 5 in front of the square root means is that after we get our answer, we're going to multiply it by 5. Alright, so square roots fall under the category of parentheses when we take order of operations. Okay, so square root of 9 is the same as 5 square root. What times itself gives me 9? 3. So 5 square root 9 is the same as 5 square root 3 squared, which is the same as 5 times, what's the square root of 3 squared? 3. And 5 times 3 gives me 15. So I'm going to leave example 8 up for you to reference, but here's example 9 that I want you to try by yourself. If x equals 81, what is the value of 3 square root x? I need someone to tell me what is my first step in this problem. Let's see, I'm going to pick someone who's not volunteering. Anthony, what's my first step? Very good. We replace x with 81. So my new expression is going to be 3 times the square root of 81. Good. Okay. What is my next step here? Let's see. Brian, what's my next step?
You find the root of 81.
Good. I find the square root of 81. What times itself gives me 81, Alana? 9. So we're going to rewrite this as 3 times the square root of 9 squared. Okay? Everybody okay with that? Okay, now Nikki was asking a good question earlier. When we take the square root, it goes away. We don't have to take the square root anymore. It's like, remember when we were doing absolute value of, I don't know, -3? What's the absolute value of -3? Positive 3. After I do that, do I have to take the absolute value anymore? No, I do the absolute value and it goes away. Same thing with square root. So I have the square root of 9 squared. So that's 3 times, what's the square root of 9 squared? 9. So I took the square root and it goes away. These guys cancel each other out. And so my answer is going to be 3 times 9, which is?
27.
Good, 27. So my answer is 27.